Summer Falgiano, and you're tuned in to Badasses in Tech. We're here with tech badass Yvette Blais, founder of the Dyslexia Collection. In this inspirational chat, Yvette breaks down what life with dyslexia is like and what she's done to make her learning differences work for her. Yvette's story is a true testament to perseverance and doing whatever you can to reach your dreams, even if that means paving your own path.
I'm starting to actually learn how to code, which is so much fun to me. My mother's an engineer, so I've been in that kind of computer. She used to have she was an entrepreneur for Dell. So I very much been around computers and softwares and programs for my whole life. So it's really interesting to kind of take that to the next level with my company and what I'm doing for the dyslexic community. And to kind of answer why I'm so involved in the dyslexia community, I am dyslexic. I graduated high school with a special education. So the same degree that someone with less capabilities as I have has the same high school degree. It's lower than a GED. So I graduated high school without even knowing kind of how to read or comprehend communication between people and reading, spelling, and math. So I always tell like my friends when they get so frustrated with me, I always tell them I was born like 7 years ago. Give me a break.
Tell us a little bit more about that experience, just for those of us who may not be as familiar or who may not even fully understand what it means. Can you describe that a little bit to us?
Describe dyslexia?
Yeah.
It's a brain-based reading comprehension. It is something that it's 100% genetic, but it's also can get developed through other issues. So over the course of time, there's over 100 other learning differences than just dyslexia. So I always like to describe dyslexia as a hub. You can have dysgraphia, math. You can have comprehension skills. You can have ADD with dyslexia. You can have ADHD and dyslexia, or you can just have dyslexia. So it's a brain-based problem. It is something that it's not going to go away. It's what either you were born with or you could develop over an accident throughout your period of life. You just have to work at it. You really do. It's not, you have to understand what it is and really kind of be like, okay, this is what I'm struggling in. Mm-hmm. And this is how I'm going to learn how to do this thing. It's not that we're smart. It's not that it's dumb. It's not superpowers. It's just another way of learning. Mm-hmm. The way we see things is completely different than the way someone that doesn't have dyslexia sees things. I always describe it as being in a totally different world.
Yeah, and I'm sure you were just describing a little bit about when you're talking with friends and how you joke about you were just what did you say there? You're just born.
I was just born 7 years ago.
And what do you mean when you say that?
Since I graduated in 2010, without even reading comprehension, really grasping the concept of reading and comprehending the world itself, mm-hmm. everything that leads to cooking, to learning how to study. I did that on my own. So when I finally realized that this was dyslexia that I had, and I have ADD and ADHD on top of that, I'm on a red scale of all three. So when I finally realized that I love to learn, I put myself mm-hmm. through courses all day long. So when I realized that that was the issue of my disability or my differences, I went to Books A Million and I kind of figured out how to learn. I taught myself how to study my way instead of having everyone else kind of, this is how you should learn or this is how you should study. I had a notebook, and since I didn't understand words very well, I would read a paragraph and then I would highlight or rewrite it in a notebook. Mm-hmm. And then I would highlight the words I didn't understand, and then I would go to my laptop, look up the definition, and highlight it and write it back on the opposite of the page. Mm-hmm. It's actually what I've done even now. I've learned how to learn on my own. So that's kind of what I meant was after, I just learned 7 years ago how to be me, because, you take someone that's out of high school and you put them as an adult. I didn't know how to comprehend that well.
Right. Yeah. And you're almost describing it as something that you didn't really realize until you maybe were a little bit older and more into your life.
Correct. I always knew I was always in special education classes. I was diagnosed when I was 7, or when I was in 3rd grade. So I was always aware. This is how I graduated, was because I looked up the laws. My mother and I looked up laws on how I could graduate high school.
You were determined.
And I was so determined to graduate high school because my sister and my mom didn't never walk. They graduated, but they didn't walk high school. So I was so determined. So we figured out. I really knew what the educational system was. It's George Bush put out a law, No Child Left Behind. I knew they weren't going to help me. No matter what they did, they weren't going to be able to teach me. Because
you took it into your own hands.
Correct. So I was like, okay, since, the No Child Left Behind law states that if you have tried everything in the system to help me and I still don't know, you have no choice but to pass me.
Right.
So I kind of figured that out and went through the processes on how to go about it without learning and taking any SATs, taking any real exams. So that's kind of how I got through the process of trying to figure out different ways to help yourself too.
Right. So tell me a little more about what you're doing in law. Is that helping you with what you're doing with the foundation?
Dyslexia is an educational problem.
Right.
No matter what you view it as, education here in America or anywhere, it's a little bit it's a little bit not up to date, not updated yet. So education is going to come into the law. There's politics involved. There's dyslexia is a brain problem. So it is a medical condition. It could be a medical condition. So you have hospitals or, clinics involved. So it is really, I am constantly reading up on different laws and constantly reading up on different new laws that are happening in the educational system, the funding behind it, who's behind the actual education, laws and what's going on, what's going to happen in the future. So I am constantly reading up on articles and things like that to help me really understand, and the public to understand in a way, what's really going on and what's going to be the next future for kids with learning differences.
It sounds like you've really taken on the responsibility of being the advocate and staying up to date and really helping the community better understand and better live with dyslexia. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on, you mentioned that you're coding and that's really exciting to you. What else is technology doing in this field, and do you find that it's helping at all, or are there things that are still needing to be done in that area? So
anything we do, in our generation, the next generation, after us, is going to help. Every president is going to have his falls and disfalls. Every system is going to have a pros and cons, a yin and a yang. With technology, it is bringing a different light to kids with learning differences. There's a couple of, I know a founder that, started an app to help read better, to, that side of the program. I know there's also different pens out there that, that help kids that aren't comprehension of the way the wording is on the paper to help read it out loud. So there are ways in technology that are helping, and that will continue to help, because we wouldn't be able to help the schools if technology wasn't there. So I am a high believer on technology, and that's why a lot of the programs and the software, the 2 programs that I'm working on, I'm always like, I see it in different other areas, and I'm like, why can't we use it?
Right.
Why can't we use it on this side? So it does come in handy, and I'm really grateful that, the more technology comes out, the more that we're going to be able to help kids with learning differences really go through the school system without it being up to date for every child.
Right. Tell me a little more about the 2 programs that you're working on specifically.
So I can't really tell you because we're still
Okay.
copywriting it. We're still copywriting it.
I see.
So I can't get into too much of the details, but it is, I always, because I am dyslexic, and I am under a nonprofit, I found myself, and I also have done, I've done pageants. So I've been modeling for a while as a public figure and helping different organizations and charities. So I've used that platform to really be that middle person to the public when it comes to dyslexia, because dyslexia is an educational system. And sometimes people that don't care about kids with learning differences, I get people's attention when they don't care because of my background. My pageant titles. So it's nice to be that middle person. So that's kind of the background of my program, is being the middle program for people that have dyslexia and really the public as well. So that's kind of my program and my projects, is being really the middle person for all parties.
That's amazing. A huge accomplishment, first of all. And like I said earlier, a great responsibility that you're taking on. So that's
it's definitely needed. It's, because the nonprofit that I run under, it's the Dyslexia Foundation, .org. It is one of those, it's the research behind it. And I've traveled the world with neuroscience, and it's so fun to be around them. But it's neuroscience, it's science. Right. And the communication between science and the public is not one is a very rare thing to do. Right. So it's really fun to really translate what they are doing behind the doors of dyslexia or neuroscience to help kids with learning differences. And then me, I walk in and I'm like, okay, how can we, I'm in the middle of an email right now, and I translate their paragraph to more of an understanding of the public understanding, more of a fun, cool way to be interested in it. Right. And they try to change it around a little bit, and I'm like, I'm sitting there.
Trust me.
I'm like, we should just tweak this word. And they're like, well, we need to have one of, I think it was a with, it was WITH. Yeah, with something. And I'm like, okay. They're like, because of this reason. I'm like, okay.
We'll let you have it.
Yeah. So it's a challenging thing, bringing science to the public in a fun, cool way. And that, that's one of the lines that the collection line that I'm launching this year is for that. It's to kind of bring the science of dyslexia and learning differences together to the public, make it fun and cool and hip. Mm-hmm.
What you've mentioned a lot about the public. What is one thing that you wish the public knew about dyslexia, or what is a misconception that you feel like the public has about it?
I think the understanding of how it really is a crisis. There are over 300 million people with learning differences, with dyslexia. And I think that with dyslexia, if it is not diagnosed properly at a young age, a child can go into depression, doesn't want to go to school. So what it leads them, they skip school. They get into the wrong crowds. Suicide risks are high. I checked myself into rehab at 19 years old. And I saw, and it wasn't because of, it was just the mental state behind it, self-awareness, self-care. You're not, it's a different world. So if you're living in one world, but you're in your head is another completely different world, there's going to be lots of issues. And everyone around you is telling you, no, you need to come to this world. But you mentally, physically cannot, because your brain does not work that way. if they're not being held for that bridge to the, the world that we all live in,
right,
that child's alone. And there's so much that we're losing a child's potential. And I think there's so much cases that way. Back in 2000s, the prison in Texas, they did a study. Majority of their prisoners were dyslexia. So it goes, girls can be, they're self-aware, their self-esteems in themselves. They can get sexually assaulted. They can get raped. There's so much that we're missing out on a human's full potential. And I think it goes, if they don't look at it for a normal person in the public, if you don't look at it as like reading or, they'll just learn on their own, we're talking about someone's like world, like their self-esteem world. Also they did a study on how dyslexia was part of mental health, and a lot of us, the community was like, well, no, but yes.
Yeah.
No, we're not in that section, but we see why you say that.
Yeah.
So I think that's really my true core behind why I'm doing what I'm doing, is that I think that if people realize what it actually is, that it is a neuroscience problem, it is a reading problem. But if a child does not get help to read, I mean, that's our world. You read a gas station, you read ingredients, you read your friends and texting. It's everything. So I think that's the course, sad part about it is that it really is. It's not about the reading. It's that if you don't understand the rules and grasp what reading actually is,
the root of it.
The root of it, that child, that adult that becomes an adult and doesn't have that ground base, what does that lead them?
Yeah. You mentioned, and I'm thinking about members in the dyslexic community who maybe are struggling and trying to pull themselves out of that rut. I'm also thinking about people out there just genuinely who are maybe hitting rock bottom in their own ways. What is your way? How were you able to pull yourself out of that? I feel like these types of conversations are really important, and I always love hearing how other people deal with challenges and struggles. So if you don't mind sharing, I'm curious as well.
Yeah, of course. Well, like I said, I did check myself into rehab at 19. The educational system did fail me. And I really, at the end of the day, I think this comes from my mother, always said this: the problems that you have now will never be the problems that you have in 10 years. And when I was going through a depression, a very suicidal stage in my life, in my head, on where do I go from here? You learn that it's a full-time job. And I always say this: you can put yourself in depression and you can put yourself out. It has to be a full-time job. You have to truly wake up every day and do it. And you have to be like, okay, if it's even, when I was that, one thing at a time, that check, what do you want? I want to wake up. All right, wake up. I want to be able to walk outside and feel like I am something. Okay, get up from bed, walk outside, stand there for 1 second if you have to, and breathe and think that you're alive, and then go back to bed. Do it. It's a full-time job. And I think that when you look at it that way, where it's like, okay, one day at a time, I'm able to do this and I'm still alive. And these are the goals that I really want, and this is who I want to be. You can truly do it, but you have to acknowledge it. You have to realize that, be like, okay, I have dyslexia. Okay, I have a small short-term memory loss because of my ADHD. And it really took home for me. And I'm like, okay, I've accepted it. Let's, let's move on. Once you acknowledge that, I think that, and you have to be so kind to yourself with what you were born with, or what problems that you have, if you were depressed or if you had any other issues. you have to be okay with that internally, you have to. If not, it's as soon as you walk outside and you see a friend, or you're around a group of people, or you're doing work, or you're, anything, you're gonna break down again.
Yeah.
So it
sounds like you've definitely come a long way. I mean, you're sitting here, you're leading these organizations. What do you think is keeping you going? What do you think is it a habit that you have that you're able to maintain and juggle all of these different things? What do you think is kind of keeping you so successful these days?
Thank you. I love what I do. I think it's one of those revenge.
Yeah.
One of that, like, I'm going to get you education system kind of feel in my core, and that, it's going to change.
Definitely.
I've always loved to help people. Even when I was in elementary school, I always would do things, and my family and friends would be like, but they need help. Like I would always put myself second. I never put myself first. I always put someone, so if someone needed me, I'm like, call my girlfriends, know they need me for anything. They can call me at 5:00 in the morning and I'm going to be right there. Like, even if I'm like sleeping and so upset, I would still, no matter what, I'm that person that you can call me at 5:00 in the morning. I'm like, what do you need? I've always been like that. And I think that because I went through the system, and I've constantly seen stories after stories after stories about what is the issue, and it's the same issues that I went through. And to me, that's so, like, it gets to me because I'm like, I went through that.
All these years, yeah.
I was 30 years old. That was 30 years ago. That was 20 something years ago. So I think that that's really the focus, or for me. And I love to learn, and I love to, I don't want my story to go untold and not have someone learn from it, and I don't want someone to go down the same path that I went through.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't suggest it to anyone. I don't suggest what I did. I'm proud of it. I'm happy I did it. It really took a lot out of me, but I don't suggest it to anyone. If you can do it a different way, please do. And do it a good, more positive and happier. Don't put yourself in that situation, please. I think just because you can get yourself out, just don't do it,
Right.
kind of moment. So I think that's really what keeps kind of me going, and trying to really make that push in the public for the dyslexia community, because it's been around since 1877.
Wow.
That's a very long time for
way too long, yeah.
A learning differences that is 300 million people that have it, to not be up with like HIV or other issues. Like, that's a huge issue. Especially when it's not going anywhere. There's no cure for it. So, we're here to stay.
I'd love to know what's next, Yvette. What's going on after all of this? What can we look forward to come from you?
The dyslexia collection, the collection line that I'm launching this year, hopefully with this lockdown that we have.
I know.
Right now, which is great because we have grants. So, which, it's nice to tap into, what's, small business women, funds and grants, and meeting those type of women. So it's always, taking the pros and cons to everything.
Absolutely.
The collection line I'm really excited about, because I've done, with the pageantry and with fashion, things like that. It's really one of my love things. I'm really excited to launch this. It's taken me a really long time, and it's going to be organic fabric. So the designs, I've designed it, the logo, I've, designed it. It's really taking me, I was going to launch it this year in February, but I decided not to, and I'm really happy I didn't. So that's, this year is going to be a lot of branding and marketing and the collection that I'm launching. I'm still learning a lot when it comes to software. Like I said, I put my tech project, I shut it down about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, to really dive into the real base of it. With technology coming up and everything that's coming up in technology, I want to make sure that when after the launch that's really getting into the right hands when it comes to crowdfunding and it comes to what, I have to use HIPAA law. I have to use a lot of medical terms. So it's really diving into more of the medical field at that point. So that's going to be a lot to learn, but I'm excited to launch that within the next 2 years when it comes to the software and program that I'll be working on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. To hear more, check out our website, badassesintech.com, and join our community. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud, so follow us and tune in next week. That about sums it up. I'm Summer Falgiano, and this is Badasses in Tech.